Hi there, it's me, Miss Muenzer, and I'm going to read the story Nim's Island by Wendy Orr. Looking at this picture, you see it says Wendy Orr, Nim's Island, and then there's a computer. And you notice the computer is kind of sitting outside in the grass. There's a starfish, an iguana, a crab, and a pair of glasses. So this tells me that this is kind of an example that there's going to be some animals in the story, something to do with a computer, and we'll take a look and see what this story says. I like this story because it is about a little girl who's 12. She's not so little, but she lives on an island with her father. Her father's a scientist, and they're the only two that live on the island. But Nim has made friends with many of the animals on the island. And it's a great summer story because of the island and the beach. All right, here we go. Chapter 1. In a palm tree on an island in the middle of the wide blue sea was a girl. Nim's hair was wild, her eyes were bright, and around her neck she wore 3 cords. One was for a spyglass, one for a whirly, whistly shell, and one for a fat red pocket knife in a sheath. With the spyglass at her eye, she watched her father's boat. It sailed out through the reef to the deeper, dark ocean, and Jack turned to wave at Nim. Nim waved back, though she knew he couldn't see. Then the white sails caught the wind and blew him out of sight, and Nim was alone. For 3 days and 3 nights, whatever happened or needed doing, Nim would do it. And what we need first, said Nim, is breakfast. So she threw 4 ripe coconuts, thump, into the sand and climbed down after them. Then she whistled her shell 2 long, shrill notes that carried far out to the reef, where the sea lions were fishing. Selkie popped her head above the water. She had a fish in her mouth, but she swallowed it fast and dived towards the beach. And from a rock by the hut, Fred came scuttling. Fred was an iguana, spiky as a dragon with a cheerful snub nose. He twined around the Nim's feet and in a prickly hug. Are you saying good morning, Nim demanded, or are you begging for breakfast? Fred stared at the coconuts. He was a very honest iguana. Coconuts are tricky to open, but Nim was an expert. With a rock and a spike, she punched a hole and drank the juice, cracked the shell, and pried out the flesh. Fred snatched his piece and gulped it down. Marine iguanas don't eat coconut, but no one had ever told Fred. Now Selkie was flopping up the beach to greet them. We'll come in too, Nim shouted, and dived off the rocks. Selkie twisted and shot up underneath, gliding Nim through the waves. Thumping over, ducking under, Nim clung tight till she was a half sea lion and half girl, and all of her was part ocean. Then Selkie and Fred went to bake on the rock, and Nim went back to the hut. She poured a mug of water from her favorite blue bottle, brushed her teeth above the clump of grass that needed the spit, and started her chores. There were lots today, because she was doing some of Jack's as well as her own. Long ago, when Nim was a baby, she had a mother as well as Jack. But one day, her mother had gone to investigate the contents of a blue whale's stomach. It was an interesting experiment that no one had done for thousands of years, and Jack said it would have been all right. It should have been safe until the Tropotaurus came to make a film of it, shouting and racing their huge pink and purple boat around Nim's mother and the whale. When Jack told them to stop, they made rude signs and bumped their boat against the whale's nose. The whale panicked and dived, so deep that no one ever knew where or when he came back up again. Nim's mother never came back up at all, so Jack packed his baby into the boat and sailed around and around the world, just in case Nim's mother came back up out of the ocean somewhere else and didn't know where to find them. Then one day, when baby had grown into a very little girl, he found this island. It was the most beautiful island in the whole world. It had a white shell beaches, pale gold sand, and tumbled black rocks where the spray threw rainbows in the sky. It had a fiery mountain and a green rainforest on high slopes and grasslands at the bottom. There was a pool of fresh water to drink and a waterfall to slide down and a hidden hollow where the grasslands met the white shell beach. There was a place for a hut. So before we move forward with our reading, let's take a look at the island. So half of the island's on one page, the other half of the island is on the other page. You have to kind of pretend that they're together. And we can look over here on the first page, and we see that there's Sea Lion Point, and you see the sea lion. That's probably Selkie sitting on the rock, right? So here's Selkie's rock right there. It says Selkie's rock. So this is where Selkie likes to sit. And that's close to the hut. So this is the hut, and here's the palm tree. Now this is Lookout Point or Lookout Palm, where Nim is sitting at the top of the palm tree at the beginning of the story, saying goodbye to her dad, which is out here in the ocean getting ready to sail away, right? So this is called Shell Beach, the beach that the hut is closest to. And Turtle Beach is off to the right, right? There's Keyhole Cove, so this is a watery area. Probably you could find a lot of shellfish and things there. Hissing Stones here. So when Nim leaves her house, she can go down the grasslands, and she'll come along the grasslands, and along here she has the Frigate Bird Cliffs, the tabletop garden. So she's got the garden here, and look at, there's a waterfall stream with a waterfall, and it ends in a pool right here of water, which is really great because it's right next to the garden, which works out pretty perfect. This is all rainforest in here, and up here is the volcano, right? They call that Fire Mountain. And then here's Emergency Cave, so this is their emergency hideout if they need it. And then there's another trail that comes down and back to the hut, so they can go up to the top and ride down the pool, right? So they can climb up and climb back down. So there's a perfect island to live on. And around it all, so that the smallest boats could weave their way through, was a maze of reef, curving from black rocks to one side to white cliffs from the other. Jack sailed back to the city for the very last time. He filled up the boat with plans for the garden and supplies for science, and he landed on the island to build a home just for him and his daughter, because he knew now that Nim's mother had stayed down at the bottom of the sea. Like a mermaid, Nim thought. He built a hut of driftwood logs and good strong branches with palm thatched roof and a hard dirt floor. He put up a satellite dish and a solar panel to charge the batteries for the flashlight, a cell phone, and a laptop computer. He made sleeping mats stuffed with rustling palm fronds, a table with two stools, a desk, bookcases, and shelves for science stuff, coconut shell bowls and seashell plates. He dug a vegetable garden in the rich soil at Fire Mountain's base and planted avocados, bananas, lettuce, oranges, pineapples, strawberries, sweet potatoes, tomatoes, and bamboo for making pipes and useful things. When he went on being a scientist, and when Nim got older, she helped him. She read what the barometer said, measured how much rain fell every day, and how strong the winds were, and how high the tides reached, how low the low tides fell, and then marked the measurements on a clean white chart with a dark blue marker. They studied the plants that grew on the island and the mammals that lived there. They put blue bands on the birds' legs and wrote down the numbers so Jack could remember the birds' birthdays and who their mothers and fathers were. Nim remembered anyway. Sometimes Jack wrote articles about the weather and the plants and the animals and emailed them to science magazines and universities. And sometimes people emailed him questions to answer. He would tell them about the tropical storms and iguana and seaweed, but he would never tell them where the island was, in case the tropo tourists ever found it, because Jack hated the tropo tourists worse than the sea snakes or scorpions. Only the supply ship, which came once a year to bring books and paper, flour and yeast, nails and cloth, and other things they couldn't make themselves, knew where they lived. It was too big to weave its way through the reef, so Jack and Nim always sailed out to meet it, and the ship's captain saw just how beautiful. So the ship's captain never saw how beautiful the island was. And every day, no matter how excited Jack got about finding a new kind of seashell or butterfly, they looked after their garden. They watered it as if it were dry, weeded the weeds, and picked what was ripe. Jack built a 3-sided shed for tools, with a hook for bananas and a big machete to cut them with. The machete was Nim's favorite tool. When they looked after the garden, they finished for dinner and checked the beaches for driftwood or bottles or anything else that might have floated in on the tide. Nim had school. That was what they called it, but it wasn't inside and it wasn't at a desk. They sat on the beach in the dark and studied the stars, and climbed cliffs to see birds in their nest. Nim learned the language of dolphins, about the tiny crabs that float out to sea on their coconut homes, and how to watch the clouds and listen to the wind. Sometimes for a whole day they talked sea lion grunts, or frigate bird squawks, or plankton wiggles. Jack loved plankton. Nim's favorites were the ones that shone bright in the sea at night, but Jack loved them all because they were so little and so important. Because little fish ate them, and bigger fish ate little fish, and the biggest fish ate the bigger fish. And there wouldn't have been any fish at all if it weren't for plankton. But Nim liked animals that you could see and have fun with. So when Jack said he was going sailing for 3 days to collect plankton, Nim decided to stay home. "I'll phone every night at sunset," said Jack. "And then you can check the email. If you don't hear from me or see me for 3 days, send an SOS. But Nim knew that Jack would be okay because he wasn't the best sailor on the ocean. And Jack knew that Nim would be okay because Selkie was with her. Selkie sometimes forgot that Nim was strong and smart and looked after her as if she were a tiny pup. Even when the king of sea lions barked at her to come and fish or snuggle down for the night with the sea lion family, Selkie stayed close to Nim. That was the first chapter. We finished it. So very interesting, huh? So we have this girl. They live on an island. There's Selkie the sea lion and Fred the iguana and Dad, who's called Jack. So sounds like a really sweet little thing they got going on their island, and I look forward to reading chapter 2 to you soon. Have a great rest of your day.